What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another 5 underrated commanders video, where I go over 5 underrated commanders, just to showcase what they are capable of, and I think most of them just don't see that much play, so let's talk about them. Maybe more of you might take an interest in them. But before I get started, I would like to remind you that most of you who are watching right now are not actually subscribed to the channel, so I'd really appreciate it if you took the time to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. And also, if you want to support the channel, check out my merch store. I have this really funny wasabi design, it's kind of my catchphrase. I do this series about once a month, and the focus is to really highlight some commanders that don't see a ton of play, but there's some gimmick about them that is fun, it's entertaining, and while they might not be super powerful, I think they do offer you something to build around. The first one I want to talk about here is Hirobi, Death's Wail. A very gimmicky commander. You don't really have a clear win con here, but that ability is super powerful because there are a ton of black spells that target without destroying. So whenever a creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, destroy that creature. So if you have easy ways of targeting creatures without having to pay that much mana, using something like Retribution of the Ancients or Tetsumak Primal Death, you're really only paying 1 black mana to target a creature. And what's cool about Tetsumak is that you'll be able to destroy a creature with a break counter on it regardless, but with Hirobi, as long as Tetsumak is in your hand, that's just another black mana to destroy a creature. And with Retribution, you don't have to really remove any counters, you can just remove 0 counters to target a creature and then kill it. Mogus's Marauder is another very fun one because kind of counterintuitive to how you would play with this creature. You're not targeting any of your own. Up to X target creatures each gain Intimidate. Well, you can target as many of your opponent's creatures as you want and kill them all with Hirobi. So it's a very unusual deck because these cards are not played in this way typically. You don't usually just target for the sake of targeting. In mono black you do have a lot of creature removal, but taking advantage of these cards is incredibly fun. And of course, to supplement the strategy, you need some sort of benefit to killing off creatures, whether it be something like a Harvester of Souls or a win con like Revel in Riches. Since your deck is going to be the best at killing creatures at the table, you need to be able to get something out of that. You need to be able to win off of something like that. And so far, Revel in Riches seems to be the clearest win con in a deck where all you really do is just kill creatures. And the next commander option here is Cassetto Orochi Archmage. You have an ability here of 2 mana, green and blue. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. If that creature is a snake, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Now clearly what you're going to do with this deck is focus on some sort of snake tribal, since in doing so you give that creature +2/+2, and you can do this ability several times. You can pay 2 mana and then pay 2 mana, give it another +2/+2, but even if you're not focusing so much on snake tribal, this is still a great option if you're looking to deal commander damage quickly, because you could of course just choose Cassetto himself and then make Cassetto even bigger and unblockable. Anytime you have this kind of ability on your commander, pretty much means that's going to be your main way of winning, is through commander damage, dealing a ton of damage unblocked. You could of course go the infect route, using something like a Blight Mamba. That can be very easy to do. Again, you have a way of pumping your snakes, so Blight Mamba tends to be one of the better creatures that you can throw into this deck. But outside of that, outside of even Snake Tribal, you want to focus on good damage triggers, because if you're dealing combat damage, you need a reward for that, and we have that reward in creatures like Orin Viper and Orin Frostfang. So both of these will let you draw cards if you deal combat damage. But of course, Snake Tribal is most certainly a strategy you're going to want to focus on, so make sure you play your things like Orochi Hatchery and Sosuke, Son of Seshiro, just anything that benefits Snake Tribal by getting you a ton of tokens or giving you +1 power. And then the next commander option we have here is Raph Capuchin Ship's Mage. A very unique commander because we have historic interactions off of commander options, but this one is essentially a ley line where you get to flash into play other cards as long as they're historic. So taking advantage of cards that are historic also from Dominaria, you can flash into play spells like Urza's Ruinous Blast that are normally sorcery speed, Karn's Temporal Sundering, and just make that strategy quicker. We have Bolus's Clutches, which is another historic card. You could also just go for an artifact strategy to make that strategy quicker. Flashing into play artifacts is never a bad thing, and hey, they're all historic, so you make cards like Gilded Lotus even quicker. If there's a bad thing about the deck is that there's no like clear win con. You're just going to be playing good stuff blue and white, which is mostly going to be legendary creatures, legendary permanents, flashing them into play, and just taking advantage of that timing. I think this deck is probably the best when you're just sitting back and playing control, flashing into play only at the best time so that you get around board wipes and whatever else your opponents want to do. And then the next commander option here is Mazek Crowl Death Priest. Now this is a commander option I've always talked about because everyone is so distracted by Marin going back to Commander 2015. Very few people ever paid attention to Mazek, but Mazek's ability is crazy. Whenever a player sacrifices another permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Sacrificing permanents in Commander is incredibly easy because everyone is already going to be playing fetch lands. Every player is going to sack their fetch land, and you're going to get a +1/+1 counter on all of your creatures. We just received a lot of black and green support from Strixhaven. We have Beladros Witherbloom, so you have a way of getting a ton of tokens. If there was a weakness to Mazek earlier on, it's that green and black didn't necessarily have creature token fodder, and having a board presence in order to reward yourself with all these +1/+1 counters was very difficult to come by. But we also have Tergrid, God of Fright, so if you want to sacrifice permanents in general, you're also going to benefit from that strategy. But in a similar way to Tergrid, you're also going to want to play cards like Soul Shatter and Vonus Hunger, anything that can force your opponents to sacrifice their permanents, sacrifice their creatures. That's just going to benefit you the most. Another card that I think just goes off with this commander that I think is going to be beneficial for a lot of decks, not just Mazek, but Necrotic Hex. 7 mana sorcery, each player sacrifices 6 creatures. You create 6 tapped 2/2 black zombies. Having each player sacrifice that many, if you have the board presence established, this is going to net you a ton of +1/+1 counters on your Mazek, and you could potentially deal commander damage. And that's another thing that should be emphasized. Because you have the potential of getting a ton of +1/+1 counters on your commander easily, what doesn't seem like that intimidating of a creature at first, Mazek could get big enough to deal commander damage. And there's already a ton of +1/+1 counter support in black and green like Winding Constrictor, shouldn't be difficult at all to get him up there. And the last commander option here to talk about today is Siloam Gar the Drifting Death from Fate Reforged. Now this is such an unusual dragon because blue and black are not dragon colors. However, there are changelings. And a commander that not a lot of people view as powerful because of changelings is incredibly capable of just wiping your opponent's boards over and over again. Flying in hexproof, so you know it's a pain to deal with. Only a 3/7, but that's crazy. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, creatures defending player controls gets -1/-1 until end of turn. That triggers each time a dragon you control attacks. So changelings, if you have something like a Maskwood Nexus, if you have any kind of changeling in these colors, or a way to get more changelings, you're going to be attacking with even more dragons, you're going to be giving your opponent's creatures even more -1/-1s. So a strategy that you wouldn't think would be really powerful is actually surprisingly effective against a ton of strategies. Even if you're only getting like -2/-2, that kills a lot of tokens. And while the dragons aren't the most powerful in blue and black, I guarantee you will get enough to have the impact of that trigger. So you'll have cards like Boneyard Scourge, Icefall Regent, not really that powerful, but if all you're looking for is getting that trigger, these are cheaper dragons. And one of the better changelings you can play in this strategy to get that trigger, Changeling Outcast. It's an unblockable dragon. So you get that trigger pretty easily and you don't have to worry about it getting killed off in combat. So anyway, let me know what you think about these 5 underrated commander options. As always, subscribe, like, comment, share, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. Check out my Teespring store, I will have those links in the description below. Void here signing off, see you all next time.